Tony Jones here.
Reverend Russell, and this is the Hardest Question video blog, and we are concluding our foray in the 6th chapter of John.
You know what's interesting to me and funny, a little bit funny, is,
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't exactly looked at the calendar, but I'm guessing this might fall like on Labor Day Sunday,
Yeah, uh-huh.
which means the youth pastor gets to preach
Right.
this. And it's like one of the most difficult passages
Yeah.
in the Gospels.
It really is.
Good luck, youth pastor. Because
Yeah.
that's when I always got to preach when I was a youth pastor,
Right,
like
exactly.
Labor Day Sunday.
And I think the way this starts out, this is like, I think this is like the greatest understatement in the New Testament.
When the disciples say, "This teaching is difficult, who can accept it?"
Yes, after he's just told them that you must drink my blood and eat my flesh.
And they're like,
This is difficult. Who can believe this?
and then Jesus says, "Oh, what, does this offend you?"
Yeah, I know.
He's being he gets a bit sarcastic.
Right.
If you think this is bad, and then he says, "The flesh is useless,"
I don't
which
get that
I would
part at
like
all.
to say, the Gnostic-leaning Johannine community in
Right.
the year 110
Right.
added that.
I think
I'd like
Well,
to think that Jesus didn't say the flesh is useless.
Yeah, because he says here, he says, he says it is the spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. I don't know if Jesus remembered what he just said like 5 minutes ago, but he said that what gave life, eternal life, was consuming his flesh.
That's how important. There's nothing more important
No,
than the flesh.
that is all there is. The flesh. You must consume my flesh.
And now he says the flesh is useless.
Because it's the spirit that gives life.
So I guess you could say despiritized flesh, but that's not what he says. I mean,
No.
you have, if you want to go deeper, you could say he means your flesh is useless, or he could say flesh without spirit is useless.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't
He
say
doesn't
either of
say
those
that,
things.
no.
He just says the flesh is
And
useless.
it is the spirit that gives life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get Jesus' first inkling of Judas's betrayal of him. Or what we really get is John the narrator reading Jesus' mind. Basically, he said this because he knew that somebody was going to betray him.
Right.
So you get this omniscient narrator in
Right.
John, which you don't get so much in the
Right.
Synoptic
No,
Gospels.
not the same amount. Well, I think this is interesting because, while it concludes with Judas, this statement about Judas, before that, people are leaving him because of this whole, like, Jesus thought he had this great argument based on this, the manna coming down and comparing himself, he's the bread from heaven. Then he pushes it further, no, it's actually, you have to actually eat my flesh, right? And then he just goes a little bit too far, and they're like, this is
I'm
hard,
out.
who can believe this? And then it says, because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. And Jesus is like a little bit, what, is he being defensive here?
This is what would be fascinating to know. What was Jesus' tone of voice? Like, all these people leave, and does he turn to Peter and the 12 and be like, what, do you want to leave now too?
Right.
Or does he say, would you also like I'm giving you permission to leave?
Right.
Or is he like, oh really? Are you going to desert me now? Am I going to be, does he
Right.
get all passive aggressive? Like,
Yeah.
it would be great to know his tone of voice. Like, why doesn't John say, and then he said, passive aggressively,
or compassionately allowed them, would you like to also leave because this is so difficult?
and they didn't go because they didn't know where else to go. That's why they
Yeah.
didn't leave him.
No, do you also wish to go away? He says, to whom can we go? But then he says, because you are the only one who have the words of life.
So here we get, kind of the 12 less Judas are people who seem to be starting to get it.
Yeah, you are the Holy One of God,
Yeah.
which I think is very different than like in Mark, which this is like inserted in Mark, where progressively in Mark, the disciples get it less and less and less.
Right.
Until they finally leave.
Yeah.
But like, I guess the ones who couldn't take it, thought it was
They
too
leave
hard,
right here.
They leave right here. And then the ones who get it know that he's the Holy One of God. They are sticking around.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We come right off these miracles where he feeds 5,000 people, and there are all these people, they can't find him, so they all get in boats and paddle across, and like, where have you been? We've been looking for you. Please perform more miracles for us. And then he is like, okay, so let me explain to you what's really important here about that bread miracle on the loaves and fishes. Well, it's that I'm actually the bread, and you have to eat me.
Yeah.
You have to, consume me.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah, no, that is too hard.
And now we're back down to a small crowd, you know, smaller at least.
I can't get it through my head. I can't stop thinking about this now that everybody should title their sermon, "Eat Me."
You let us know at the THQ blog if you title your sermon "Eat Me."
Okay, thanks.